My daughter helped someone verbally beat me down in public, so I told her I'm not buying her spoiled self a car. Now my wife is saying it's my fault. Last week, my wife, our 2 kids, and I went to the zoo for my daughter's 23rd birthday. We were having a great time, and while leaving an enclosure, some woman sort of cut us off and pushed in front of us to get out first. She didn't actually touch us, and it wasn't that big of a deal, but it was a little obnoxious. I said, "There's no need to push ahead, lady." She responded with something like, "How did I push ahead? It's not like there's a queue." I just tutted and thought, whatever, not worth it. But then some giant guy, who was apparently her son, said to her, "What, does someone have a problem, Mom?" I didn't realize this because they looked very different. She was white, he was mixed, not that it matters. She pointed me out, and her son then turned around and started aggressively antagonizing me for no reason. He told me to keep my comments to myself, called me the equivalent of a female dog, a Karen, and kept referring to me as tiny, saying I had little man syndrome. It was just really off-the-wall stuff for what I thought was a benign comment. Then, for some reason, my daughter felt the need to take up for this guy and started saying stuff like, "Why are you like this? Why do you feel the need to say something?" She then started apologizing to the guy and agreed with him that I'm a Karen. I was really taken aback by this. The guy asks how old she is, and she tells him. He then asks for her number, and she gives it to him. He hands his phone over to her, and she types in her number. The entire time this guy is staring at me with a crap-eating grin on his face. When my daughter comes back over to us, I ask her, "What the hell was that?" And she just says, "What? He's cute, and you need to be put in your place every once in a while," I said, since that's what she thinks. She can buy her own car for her birthday. She clearly thought I wasn't serious because when she asked if we could look at cars, I told her she can look by herself because I'm still not paying for it. This has divided my house, with my son taking my side, saying she was out of line, and my wife saying it's not worth ruining my relationship with her over. I feel like if not getting her a car as punishment is enough to ruin her relationship with me, then I probably spoiled her too much anyway. She already has a car that I bought her 2 years ago, which works fine, so it's not like I'm exactly depriving her. Was I really out of line? Edit. I am at work on my lunch break right now, and I have skimmed the comments and will address a few things I feel are relevant. The car I bought her 2 years ago was a runaround Fiat 500, second-hand. It is in fine shape but not exactly the nicest car. I had promised my daughter an Audi, as my son is going traveling for his 21st birthday, which I am paying for. The car she wanted was roughly the same cost. She doesn't live at home, she hasn't since she moved out for university at 18. I don't feel like I am a Karen, but I'm not shy to speak up or complain if I feel I must. If people are rude, or something is not up to my standard, I will happily say something. Realistically, I couldn't beat up the 6'4" or whatever 20-something-year-old mouthing off to me. I am 47 years old, and have worked an office job for the last 20 to 30 years, and have a bad back. Update 1. So I got home about an hour ago, and my wife called me into the room to talk. She gave me an ultimatum. She said I can either swallow my pride and buy my daughter the car, or she will buy the car with her own money. My wife doesn't earn as much as me but still has a well-paying job and can afford it. She said that everyone is sick of my attitude in public, that every time we go out, I get into some sort of altercation or disagreement with someone over some petty crap. I think this is a gross exaggeration, but my wife showed me texts from my daughter asking if she can go out with just my wife because I always do something to embarrass everyone. My wife refused and defended me, saying that's not true, and that's why, when I got into that argument, my wife said nothing about my daughter's actions. She said she isn't going to punish my daughter because I can never keep my mouth shut, especially when my daughter said she didn't want me there because something like this would happen. She defended me only to be made to look like a fool. She says that my daughter barely likes me as it is, and if I do this, I shouldn't be shocked when she stops talking to me completely. I asked my wife if all I am to my daughter is a piggy bank, and she told me to stop playing the victim. She said it's up to me what I do with my money, but my daughter will be getting the car one way or another, so I can either make her hate me for no reason, or I can swallow my pride and get her the car myself. Don't really know where to go from here. Update 2. Sorry I didn't respond much, a lot happened yesterday. After everything, I called my daughter and asked her to come over because I wanted to talk about everything. My wife said to just let it go, but clearly, everyone had a problem with me that I didn't know about, so I wanted to get to the bottom of it. So, I waited for my son to get home, and my daughter drove over a little later, and we all sat down to have a little talk. I started by doing what many of you suggested and asked for actual examples, rather than just accepting their word for it. Honestly, a lot of it sounded ridiculous. The fact that I sent back a steak twice because both times it was undercooked, as if it's a crime to want an expensive steak cooked correctly. The fact that I argued with someone who sat in our assigned seats at a cinema even though it was nearly empty, again, as if it's a crime to want to sit in the seat I paid for when there are dozens of other places for these people to sit, and other equally silly things which I can't be bothered to get into and don't even really remember due to the insignificance of it. Despite thinking that it was all ridiculous, I said I would do my best to be a meek pushover in public if that was the only way to get them to like me. I also stated that I would get the car on one condition, that my daughter hadn't actually texted the guy who abused me. I asked to look at her messages, and she said not to bother because she had texted him, and I didn't have the right to control who she talks to. I acknowledged that was true, but I do have the right to spend my money on whatever I want, and I'm not getting my daughter a car, she already has one that works fine. Even if I am a jerk, in a situation where her family is getting threatened, she sided with the aggressor and then doubled down on that, and that is unforgivable. My daughter blew up at me, saying that I am a petty little pig-headed man with a Napoleon complex, and that all the money in the world hasn't stopped me from being a giant loser. I said, "Oh yeah, because the guy who screams at old men is such a winner." She screamed at me that I'm not a victim, and then said something about how cathartic it was to watch someone stand up to me, and that the second he did, she watched me shrink back into the little boy I'd always been growing up. That was the last straw. I told her to get out. However, she doubled down and told me that my wife had told them about me being bullied growing up and that was why I am the way I am. I saw my wife turn pale as a ghost at this comment. This is something I confided in her in private. Clearly, this is why my daughter stopped respecting me. Obviously, I wasn't cool enough for her or whatever. I was speechless, but my daughter carried on. She said, "Make a genuine promise to Jake, that he can still go to Cambodia, and ask him what he really thinks." I just nodded. Her brother begged not to be put in the middle of this, but I insisted. All he said was, "Sometimes you can be a bit much, Dad." My daughter called him a wuss and just walked out. My son ran off to his room, and my wife drove off after my daughter. She didn't come back last night, and I've not heard from my wife or daughter since. I've called out of work, and my son left for university without saying a word to me. I've barely slept a wink. I can't believe it. I'm a cliché, a rich old man whose family hates him. If I was lost before, now I'm genuinely clueless about what I'm supposed to do.